Good evening. It is 6 o'clock and it's time to start our live exam review for the Institute of Real Estate Education. I'm Rick Roller and I'll be your host tonight. Our technical advisor and producer, Dan, will be joining us a little bit later. And I want to share a few remarks with you just before we get into today's or tonight's questions. I taught a live 3-hour mandatory class this morning, and it was really a lot of fun. We had over half the class had been in my pre-licensing classes before, so it was kind of like old home week. I mean, one lady had taken the classes back in 1992 and another lady in 1994. It's really a lot of fun. And one of the things that came up in that class was that everyone in the room agreed that we are entering into a little different market. The market is changing and is changing quite rapidly. So I wanted to address that for just a moment and share with you some ideas and concepts that will help you. Fair enough. And then we'll jump into the questions. Okay. So just for a few moments, let's talk about that. And I want to start with a story. There's two young boys, and they were sitting on the patio, the backyard patio of one of the boys' homes. Now, these two youngsters were just entering high school, and where they were going to go to high school, the high school only did sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So it's a 3-year high school. And they were talking amongst each other. And in the backyard also was an older, wiser brother of one of the boys, who was working on the lawnmower, doing it a little tune-up and getting ready to mow the lawn. And one of the young boys says to the other, he says, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish when we go to high school? And the one boy says, well, in my senior year, I want to be student body president. And the first one said, well, hey, if you're going to be student body president, I want to be senior class president. Now, they were just having this conversation. Now, the older, wiser brother, who was about 19 and had already graduated from high school, came and said, are you two guys serious about this? And they kind of looked at each other and says, well, yeah, I guess so. He says, well, it's going to take more than that. It's going to take a commitment. But here's what I suggest you do. And here's the advice he gave them. He said, I want both of you to go to the student body officer of the current class, the one you're entering into. I mean, you're entering into sophomore, but I want you to talk to the student body president and to the senior class president who's currently at the high school. I want you to talk to the ones that were in my class because they're friends of mine. I have their phone number. And I want you to talk to 2 others as well from another year. Now, that'll give you 3 people for each position because these positions are elected positions. And what I want you to do is find out what they did to win those elections. And then I want you to implement what they did in your campaigns and in your activities that you do in school so that you can get the same results that they got. In other words, if you do the same things that somebody else has done to accomplish what you want to accomplish, you have an excellent chance of accomplishing those same items. Well, I was the senior class president, and my friend Mark was the student body president. Well, how in the world did 2 snot-nosed kids who were just entering the high school as sophomores predict 2-3 years in advance where they're going to be? Because we did exactly what the older, wiser brother told us to do. Now, what does it have to do with you in real estate? Well, it's the same thing, folks. If you want to be successful in the current market that we'll be working in just a few months, and it's already started to change. I put one under contract this week where we didn't have to bid over the list price. In fact, we got a 10% of the list price concession from the seller to pay the buyer's closing costs. So it's about a $500,000 house. They got a $5,000 concession from the seller. So we not only did not have to bid over list, but we actually got seller to pay $5,000 of the buyer's closing cost. In fact, the competitive market where we saw a lot of people bidding up these prices and whatnot has evaporated almost like that. And we're seeing people that are actually doing price reductions now, and we're entering into a more normal type market. So here's what I'd suggest you do. You see, in my class that I taught live this morning, I had a lot of students in there that got into real estate in 2016, one that got in that had only been involved for like a couple of years, and a lot of newer people into business. Now, these newer people have never been through a down market. Never. The only market they've known is a market where you had to overbid, where you had to write love letters to the seller to get them to accept your offer, and all these other kinds of things that we've been doing for the last few years. I admonish you, when you're going to take your advanced classes, or you're going to take your CE credit classes, like the 3-hour mandatory class and whatnot, find an instructor who's been through some down markets. Now, I've been through at least 3, okay? Because you have to do things differently in a down market than you do in an up market. Because if you want the results from someone, you need to learn from someone that's been through it, okay? And they'll tell you, because it's different. You're going to have to prospect differently. You're going to have to target the people that you want to prospect to a little differently. And you're going to have to learn how to do things that you currently don't know how to do. You need to get information on how to do short sales, although we will see some, not as many as we saw back in the early 2000s, but we'll see some, because people actually have equity now. You're going to have to get familiar with foreclosure, because even though they have equity, that doesn't mean they have jobs. You know, you can have sellers that have equity in their home, but they can't make the payments, and so they could be facing foreclosure. You need to be very familiar with that process. You need to know how to stop it if you can, and preserve as much equity that those sellers have. You need to be of service, but in order to do that, be of service to these people, you need to learn things you don't know. You need to learn how to do assumptions, which most people in the real estate business that have been in less than 5 years haven't an idea what that's about. Well, why? Well, because you have all these great, fantastic 3.5%, 2% loans that are fully assumable, where the rates will not expand. Now, there's a lot of equity in that property, but you need to learn how to do some seller financing. So these are all the types of things that you need to learn how to do in order to get the results that I know you're looking for. And you know what? You can do this. You can do it. I know you can do it. I've been there. I did it. I started in the business and first got licensed in 77, but really started in 78. And we were in a recession like we are now. And it was weird. I mean, but like, I didn't know any different. That's just what I learned how to do. And I sold 58 homes my first year, made Rookie of the Year. Second year, sold 98. And there's nothing special about me. I just really wanted it to happen. And I had learned from my earlier days that in order to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, I had to go and talk to people that had actually done the work in the same type of market, and then do the same things that they did. It's not rocket science. You're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. Sure, you have to talk to people. You're going to have to work with people that are facing hard situations, but you can do it. And you know what? I've always made more money in a down market than I have in markets like we've had, you know. And the most important thing of all is you're going to have to control the inventory. Okay, so those are just some ideas I wanted to share with you. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a couple of great topics. We're going to be talking about contracts, and we're also going to be talking, a little bit about a couple other topics that we pulled together. But I got about 19 questions here. And man, these are great questions, and you need to know this material. So let's start right in with number 1. I'm going to read them to you, and Dan's going to put them on screen a little later. Okay, number 1, which of the following choices would not be considered to be valuable consideration and therefore meet the requirement for a valid contract? Which of the following choices would not be valuable consideration? Now, as you can see on your screen, as Dan puts this question up a little later, you'll see it, the not is capitalized. So they're not going to throw in a question that totally changes the direction of the question without being fair about it. You know, they're not going to hide the not in small print or, hope you don't notice it. It's in caps. Okay, so you're going to see it. So here are the questions. Well, we're looking for the not. Which one would not be considered valuable consideration? A, performing a service for someone. Would that be valuable consideration? Yes, it would. Performing a service. B, lifelong friendship. Hang on to that one. C, promissory note. Is a promissory note consideration? Is that considered valuable consideration? Yes, it is. D, a parcel of land with back taxes due. Okay, well, it has nothing to do with consideration. Okay, so the correct answer is B, the lifelong friendship, because that is not a valuable consideration. Okay. Well, if the parcel of land, even if it had back taxes on it, I guess is using maybe as a trade, as a partial trade on it, then it would be valuable. It could be valuable consideration. So you might narrow it down to B and D. A lifelong friendship or a parcel of land. That's kind of weird. Could a parcel? Yes, it could be, but not a lifelong friendship. So the correct answer is B. Lifelong friendship is not considered valuable consideration. Number 2, a valid contract for real estate should have. Now, contracts have several different things that make them valid. And a valid contract for real estate should have A, consideration. That's good. B, notarized, been notarized. Do contracts have to be notarized? No. C, a lease. A valid contract for real estate should have a lease. Do they have to have a lease? No. Or D, incompetent parties. Well, no, incompetent parties definitely isn't going to work. So the correct answer to this one, a valid contract for real estate should have A, consideration. Okay. Number 3, who must sign an agreement to sell a property? Who must sign an agreement to sell a property? Okay. We're talking about a listing contract, aren't we? An agreement to sell property would be a listing contract. Let's look at the answers. A, all owners of the property. When you list a property, if there's 2 owners, do they both have to sign? Most certainly. How about if there's 5 owners? Do they all have to sign? Yes, they do. All of them. So hang on to that answer. That's warm and fuzzy. B, the owner with the largest share. Well, that'd be great to have them sign, but who must sign? The owner with the largest share. Well, all owners have to sign. So far, A is the best answer. C, the owner's agent. The owner's agent? Do you have to sign the listing contract? D, the owner's heirs. Well, only if they're receiving ownership in the property. So out of all these, the correct answer, the best answer is A, all owners of the property. If there's 7 owners, 7 signatures are required. 3 owners, 3, 2 owners, 2. If it's owned with just 1 owner, then just 1 owner has to sign it. Okay. Number 4, question number 4. D and E are tenants in common. Tenants in common. But they both rarely spend time in the property anymore as their lives have changed over the years. D, one of the owners, wants an agent to list the property because they're just not using it. So what is true? A, D can sign a listing agreement for the property. They can, but there's 2 owners, both D and D. So you need to get both signatures, or how about just one? You need both signatures, 2 owners, 2 signatures. Okay. So D is, or A is not correct. D can't, well, I can sign the listing, but that won't actually list it. You won't have a valid contract because you need all owners to sign. B, no signatures needed to list the property. No, they've got to agree to that listing contract. That isn't any good. How about C? E can give verbal permission to list the property. Oh yeah, verbal permission? Sure. No. What about the statute of frauds? Statute of fraud says contracts, in order to be enforceable, need to be written. All right, and then we have D, the correct answer. D says both D and E must sign the listing agreement. Remember, two people, D and E. Now, the fact that they're tenants in common, does that have any bearing on this? No, they could be tenants in common. They could be joint tenants. In any type of joint ownership, tenancy by the entireties, be fine. But if there's two owners, two signatures. Number 5, P is selling a property to G. P is selling a property to G, and they are each represented by agents. Who should sign the purchase agreement? The offer, and that offer that got accepted, which turned into the purchase agreement. Who should sign it? Answer A says both P and G and their agents. Do the agents have to sign the purchase agreement? No, they're not the owners. The agents don't have to sign it. That's not good. P and his agent, P and G, those are the two owners. Yeah, that's C. That's the correct answer. And D, G and his agent. Well, the fact that P and his agent and G is his agent are two of the answers. You probably eliminate both those because they're both similarly wrong. The correct answer is the owners must sign, not the agents, and all the owners must sign. Kind of hammering that idea home. I wonder why. It's because you're going to see it again someday when you're sitting in front of a computer trying to pass an exam. If there's 12 owners, 12 have to sign. It's a mess, or it can be. I think the largest one I've ever done, I had 9 owners, and it was what we call a TIC. TIC. It's a tenants in common agreement, and they owned a restaurant that they leased to a national brand. The national brand decided they didn't, during COVID, they didn't want the restaurant anymore, so they bankrupt that particular one, and we put the property on the market. So I had to get 9 signatures, 9 signatures on the listing, 9 signatures on the offer that we eventually agreed to, and 9 signatures on all the settlement documents as well. Of course, it was 1.8 million. It was worth it running around getting all those signatures. And they were all over the country too. So, okay, let's look at number 6. A contract that is only binding to one party, such as an option to purchase a piece of land, is only under an option. Does the owner of the option, the person that got the option, do they have to close, or do they have the option to buy or not buy? Okay, they have the option to buy or not buy. They have an option to buy or not buy. But if they decide to buy, must the seller sell? Yes, they must. Okay, so looking again at number 6, a contract that is only binding to one party. Okay, because the option, the person that owns the option doesn't have to close. Okay. Such an option to purchase a piece of land is bilateral, both people promises back and forth, or is it only a promise one way? It's unilateral. In fact, it is the very best answer when you see the term unilateral. The very best example of a unilateral contract is an option. Leases aren't unilateral. Tenant makes promises, landlord makes promises. Buyers and sellers make promises to each other. Listing contracts are broker and either sellers or buyers make promises to each other. But the very best example of a unilateral contract is an option agreement, because the promise only goes one way. Okay, and the person that owns the option doesn't have to buy. Usually they paid a fee for that, and the fee is forfeited if they don't buy, but that's usually how that works. Number 7, any contract can be rescinded if or canceled. Okay, if A, the buyer backs out, contracts are binding on a buyer. The seller feels the price is too low. Well, sellers are committed to a contract as well. This next answer, A and B are wrong. C is right. Both parties agree. It's called a mutual rescission. Both parties agree, well, I want out. Well, that's okay, I want out too. So we'll just rescind the contract. And D, the parties are married. What's that have to do with anything? Not anything, okay? Number 8, K was hired to manage a large apartment building. He would be functioning as what type of agent? It's a large apartment building, and he's managing it. So, when a plumber's needed, he calls in a plumber, and the same with the electrician and painters, and supervises the bidding and the installation of new carpet and the maintenance on the apartment, and collects the rents and whatnot. So, what kind of agent is this person? Are they a specific agent? A. Are they B, an attorney in fact? C, a general agent? Or D, a universal agent? Well, let's look at D first. D says universal. That means you do everything for someone. So if they have hired you to manage their apartment building, does that mean that you get to manage their home as well, or in their bank accounts and their 401ks and their brokerage account? And no, no. So you're not, that's what a universal agent does. They manage everything for someone. The correct answer is C, general agent. So as it pertains to that particular building, that property manager has broad sweeping authority to do whatever is necessary. If there's repairs, a lot of times their maintenance their management contract will say that you're authorized to authorize repairs up to $1,500 or something. But above that, you need to call and get, verbal authorization from us. But they're a general agent. They collect rents, they interview tenants, they can even sign the agreements, the leases and whatnot. C is the correct answer. Attorney in fact, okay, is an individual operating under a power of attorney. Power of attorney gives them the right to sign for something else, but they're very specific usually. It's only for one type of activity, or it's only good for one particular property. And that's not a general agent. That means you can sign the documents, but you can't do much of anything else. And the specific agent, well, that's what you are when you list a property or you sign a buyer's agreement. Specifically, were hired to sell this particular property, which is very limited authority. You can't sign a contract for them. Accepting offers, you have to present it to them, and you're not authorized to make repairs and other things like a property manager might be. Okay, let's go to number 9, please. Number 9 is Z listed the property. When the buyers expressed interest in seeing it, Z disclosed that they would have no representation, and the buyers agreed to that in writing. When writing the offer, the buyers asked Z what they should offer, and Z responded, 93% of the list price would be good, which most implies what? Okay. A, this is a limited agency and legal. Limited agent means that you are representing two parties in the same transaction. Okay. B, Z is properly representing the seller and obtaining an offer. You can't suggest a price lower than the list price. That wouldn't be proper. C, this is ostensible agency between Z and the buyers. By taking the buyer's side and offering them this particular type of advice, it's really going against the relationship you have with the seller, but it's also creating what's called ostensible or apparent or implied authority. Ostensible, you'll see it on the test, so you need to know what that word means. It means implied, primarily. Apparent. So that's ostensible because he was telling the buyers what to do. D, that was wrong to begin with, because if you already have an agency contract with the seller, you can't suggest lower prices. You have to suggest the list price. D, Z has created an implied agency with the seller. No, the seller already has agency with the seller. We're talking about the buyers here, okay? That was number 9. Number 10, which of the following is not one of the fiduciary duties of a property manager, acting under a contract between the broker and the property owner? Okay, property manager, they have a contract, whatnot. Okay, which one is not one of the fiduciary duties? Do you have a fiduciary duty of loyalty? Yes, you do. Obedience? Yes, you do. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Is that a duty? No, it's just a Latin term that says that the buyer needs to be on his, looking out for his best interest. Okay. And a duty of confidentiality. Well, if you know your fiduciary relationships, you know that loyalty, obedience, and confidentiality are all three under the responsibilities of a fiduciary, but not caveat emptor. It's a great Latin term, but it has nothing to do with your fiduciary. Okay. Number 11, please. And it says, broker B received an offer for a property she has listed. Super. God, glad she got an offer. The listing states that the property has sewer hookups, but the property actually has a septic tank. What should broker B do? Oh my gosh, on the MLS, you put down it had a septic tank, but you find out that it really doesn't. Okay. A, submit a counteroffer to correct the misconception. B, do nothing because sewer hookups are a matter of public record and they should have looked it up themselves. C, revise the listing with the seller to disclose accurately. That even sounds right, doesn't it? Okay. D, refuse the listing. No, I'll take the listing, but I'll be very careful and make sure that the listing is correct, even if I have to revise it and disclose all those things accuracy. Lots of people buy properties with septic tanks on them. Okay, there's not a problem with that, but they need to know what they're getting. One of the reasons why you need to know your market, if you're out in an area where you're selling homes and you know they're all on septics because there is no municipal sewer out there, then you'll know because you work that area. And that's a good argument on why, even though you can sell real estate all over the state of Utah because you're licensed in the state of Utah, for example, or any state, that maybe you shouldn't stray so far outside of your area because there's little things you need to know about areas and subdivisions and whatnot. Here in Salt Lake County, we have several areas that are, well, they were tainted sites and they were capped. So they were polluted sites and they've been capped with dirt. Well, that's something that needs to be disclosed. And if you know where those are, you know where they are. Same thing in Park City. There are subdivisions built on mill tailing dumps. And people need to be aware that, it's probably not a good place to put in a garden. Okay. So anyway, they have to put in a box garden that's above ground and make sure the roots can't go down below into the tainted soil, or they're going to have a lot of high mineral content in their tomatoes, and not positive minerals, negative. Okay. Let's look at number 12. M took a listing. Which of the following situation best describes the concept of designated agency? Designated agency. Now, in our state, you could be a single agent, a limited agent, or you could be a designated agent. That's your only three choices right now. So a designated agent is where you have an in-house sale. Both the agents, the one representing the buyer and the one representing the seller, are both in the same brokerage, which would mean since your broker owns both the buyer's listing and the seller's listing, your broker is going to be a limited agent. But your broker could designate one agent to represent the seller and one agent to represent the buyer. So your broker would be limited. And that's a good example of designated agency. Now, which of the following statements would best describe the concept of designated agency? The contract states, A, broker and all the agents will represent the seller. No, the broker and only one of the agents would represent the seller. C, the broker is B, the broker and M will represent the seller. Okay, M's the one that took the listing. Okay, that makes sense. Because because the listing belonged to the broker anyway. So the broker owned the listing, but the agent M took the listing. So they're both representing the seller. Now, when somebody else in the office, same broker, comes in with an offer, then the broker moves into a limited agency position representing both the buyer and the seller, being fair and honest to both of them. But the other agent in the office will represent the buyer as a designated agent, and you'll represent the seller. M will represent the seller as a designated agent. Okay. All agents in the office be designated limited agents. No, that's generally it's not the way it's done. And C, the broker is a limited agent. M represents the seller. Um, that's the same answer as B. Now we'll have to correct that. Number 13, R lists a home for P for $186,000. Okay. P tells R he must sell soon. Man, I need to sell really soon, tells his listing agent. And he will accept offers as low as 177,000. R makes a note of P's comment on the bottom line of the listing and attaches it to the listing info sheet of his broker, ABC Realty. Now J, another agent in the office, sees the listing and immediately offers to purchase the home personally for 177. What should R do? Okay. Present the offer as written, A. B, inform P that J is in the same office and knows P's bottom line. You get whatever your fiduciary, your seller has to know, and when you know it. So you'd have to tell them, well, they were probably digging through the file, and that's why they came up with 177. But you said that was the price that you would accept if you had to. So this is why we lock up the files in the office anymore. You shouldn't have. You should have held that more confidential, okay? Because hey, the other person who's buying this property is a listing agent, but Jay sees the listing. That Jay is the buyer. Jay may have offered more money for that property if he hadn't seen that note in the file. Okay, C, involve agent L so R can collect both commissions. Now, refuse to present the offer. No, you have to present all offers. Number 14, L submits an offer to buy A's property. L submits an offer to buy A's property. L is A or and. Are they a vendee? And that's a seller. Are they a vendor? Well, that's a seller. Vendee is a buyer, excuse me. Vendee is the person that is receiving the goods. Okay, they're the buyer. Vendor is a seller. Offeree is the one making the offer. No, is the one receiving the offer. Okay. The ORs are the givers, guys, and the EEs are the receivers. So what is the vendee receiving? He's receiving the property. Okay, and the vendor, the giver, is giving a deed to that vendee. So what about the offer? Well, the offeror is the buyer and the receiver of the offer is the seller. Okay. So L submits an offer to buy A's property. L is a offeror because they're submitting. The ORs are the givors. Okay, givors are the ORs. All right. You can do this. Just take your time, one step at a time. Watch these videos a few times. Study, study, study. Call if you have trouble or want to ask questions. We're here to help you. You can do this. Once you get into business, you can do this too. Okay, we're going to have a great time. And you can actually start to get some good deals again now. So this is a very exciting market we're entering into. Number 15, a home goes under contract for sale. The seller includes in the purchase agreement for the home to include in the sale the riding lawnmower and the trampoline. Which is true? Well, they made an offer and they want the riding lawnmower and the trampoline. That's true. But let's look at the answers and see which one fits. A, the riding lawnmower and the trampoline must be transferred to the buyer. Yeah, they're part of the offer. Hang on to that one. That's warm and fuzzy. B, the riding lawnmower must be transferred, but not the trampoline. No, it listed both of them. C, the riding lawnmower need not be included, but the trampoline must go as per the contract. No, they were both in the contract. D, the seller does not need to include either item, either the lawnmower or the trampoline, since they're personal property. Most real estate transactions involve personal property, and we recite it in the offer saying this is personal property and will be transferred as part of this deal. That's what this contract said. It said the lawnmower and the trampoline go with it. They go with the house. Now, be careful how you say that, because if you're saying to the seller, well, does the riding lawnmower and trampoline go or does it stay? The seller says, yeah, it goes with me. It stays with me. And I'm taking it with me to my new home. So be very specific. Now, is riding a lawnmower and a trampoline, according to this offer, it needs to be transferred to the buyer for their enjoyment of when they buy the house. Okay, just be real clear. Otherwise, you'll end up buying lawnmowers and trampolines. You don't want to do that. Okay, well, yeah, you do, but you want to buy them for your own use with your commissions, not buy them for somebody else. Okay, number 16. After listing the property, a broker discovers some improvements too close to the line. Okay, in other words, they're trespassing, or they're maybe not exact trespass, but they're in the setback area. That's going to cause a problem. Most subdivisions have setback requirements saying you can't build right on the property line. Now, some allow you to build on the property line. They're called zero lot line lots, okay? But most lot lines are you have to be 6 feet in, or 6 feet from the back, 6 feet from the sides, 12 feet from the sides. That's going to depend on the subdivision, how big the lots are, and how much they want to make use of that land. So anyway, what's happened here is the broker just listed the property and discovered that some improvements have actually encroached into the setback areas. He should choose the best answer. Tell the seller. Okay. B, consider this information a material fact. C, do nothing because the situation is not a material fact. And that's kind of a giveaway. It is a material fact. Anything which might have great impact, financial impact to the buyer, is going to be a material fact. And D, do nothing because the only entity that can deal with this property is a surveyor. Okay, you're going to be dealing with it. Okay, so check it out. It's a lot of homework when you take a listing. There's a lot of things that need to be done, and hopefully the seller will be forthright and let you know a lot of these things. If not, you better do some investigation and make sure you get it right. Okay. Number 17. All right. Jay receives an offer for the purchase of their home through their agent. Okay. Jay receives an offer for the purchase of their home through their agent. Oh, listing agent brought him an offer. The offer is 12 pages long and full of legal jargon and language. The agent should, A, have Jay sign accepting offer, then talk about the contract clauses later. Yeah, what do you think? No, can't do that. Okay. B, review all the clauses with Jay before signing them and explaining to them what they do and what they mean, and then have them accept the offer if they choose to. That's a good one. That's the answer. That's the correct answer. C, have Jay reject the offer and review the clauses before submitting a counteroffer. Counteroffer is a rejection. It's a rejection of the offer. We won't do that, but we will do this. Okay. And so you can't do King's X. When you counter on a property and the buyer says, "Nah, forget it. I'm going to walk." Oh, okay. King's X. I'll take that first offer. They don't have to do that. No, I changed my mind. I don't want to work with you. Whatever. Okay. And sometimes they still want to buy the property, and that's good too. Now, a home inspector, what are they doing? In fact, a little later this evening, I'll be out on a home inspection with an inspector. And this inspector is actually a relative of the buyers, their Uncle Bob or whoever, but anyways, an uncle. Knows a whole lot about building and has done home inspections in the past. Has a checklist he goes through. We'll be meeting him at the property and we'll be walking through and doing a home inspection. I recommend home inspections. I think they're important. Now if there's sometimes I require them. Okay. If I'm listing a property and the owners are out of state. Now, on your property disclosure statements, they say, well, we've never lived in the home. We've only rented it out. We knew there was one problem that our property manager took care of, but other than that, we haven't any idea what, we don't know. Yeah, we had that fixed. Our property manager took care of that. Here's his number. You can call him and ask him what was done. Don't know. Okay. Well, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, because I don't want my seller sued later. Okay. Now, if they're from California, they rarely object to this, because I say, well, What we need to do is get a home inspection, and you need to pay for it and give it to the buyer because they may not want to do that. But since you don't know anything about the property, we need to do that. Excuse me, got a few hiccups here. And give them a home warranty. Those two things, and together they're going to cost about $1,100. But if they're selling a property, like maybe they inherited it, and it was one of the spouse's parents had it, and they just have been running it for a while, but they heard the market was so high in Salt Lake, they decided, hey, let's just sell it and take the money. We're making pretty decent rent, but on the other hand, we need some dough, so let's take the dough. If there's ever a time to sell, man, in these past few months would have been a great time because the market was so dang high. But a home inspector would likely find issues with the market price. No. Furnace or water systems. Yes. Property stigmas. No. Like what? Someone died in a house? No. That's not what a home inspector does. Neighborhood demographics. Oh, okay. Here's the demographics of the neighborhood you're buying into. We got a couple of Irishmen over here. We got a couple of Jews over here. We got a bunch of Mormons over there. No, that's not what they do. Okay. Correct answer is furnace and water systems. And number 19, when dealing with the land contract, okay, a land contract, or also called uniform real estate contract. Now, this is a type of financing document. Okay. Which of the following choices is not one of the available remedies for default? Not a choice for default. A, change the locks and hold their the people who live here, hold their belongings as security for back payments owed. Can't do that. Okay. That's when you cannot do. Okay. Buyers have rights, and that, locking them out like they're a tenant is, you don't have that right. They have rights to the property. They're equitable title holders. Okay, even though the legal title might still be in the seller's name, they're equitable title holders. Renters aren't equitable title holders. Okay, they only get limited rights to a property. So, A, change the locks and hold their belongings as security. No. So, and that's our correct answer, because the question said not one of the available remedies for default. B, use the steps of foreclosure to get them out. You can do that. C, treat them as renters and evict them and hire an attorney to collect back payments. Well, under an installment land contract or uniform real estate contract, many times that is a provision and could possibly be done if it's a provision in the contract. And D, use a foreclosure proceeding in court. Yeah, so they can do all those things. Okay, those are our 19 questions for tonight, and we really appreciate you tuning in. These little reviews could make the difference between getting it and not getting it, and I really appreciate your attention. Thanks for being at our school. I might close with one more quick little story, okay? I mentioned earlier that I was sold 58 properties my first year and 98 second year. I was rookie of the year in my board of realtors in Grand Junction, Colorado, when I started. And what happened was I knew one person in Grand Junction, and that was Steve Matthews. He was my brother-in-law. And bless his heart, Steve waited till I got licensed. And the day I got licensed, man, he was in my car and we're out looking for a house. And we found one that very day. So I went back to the office with Steve. We wrote up an offer. My sales manager was there, and he kind of reviewed it and rewrote it a little bit. That was my very first day. Okay. And then I got that presented to the other agent involved, and they got it signed, and we had it under contract that same day. Went out there in the morning, got it all put together by the time the sun went down. Okay. First day, got a sale. Super duper. Thank you, Steve. By the way, Steve got into business a year after I did. He's still a broker today. We're still really great friends, and we actually do quite a bit of business together. And he's actually located. He's a broker in Nevada, and we do things together all the time. Okay, so, but Steve was the only guy I knew in town. So I asked Steve. I said, "Well, do you know of anyone else who wants to do anything in real estate?" And he said, "Well, yeah, there's this guy I know at church." And he just told me he's thinking about selling his house. Well, let's get him on the phone, Steve. So Steve called him up on the phone, and he says, yeah, man, we got a property. We're so excited. We're still here in the area, and we can still be friends and everything else. And, you told me you wanted to sell your house. You ought to talk to Rick, and the guy says, yeah, sure. And I went over that next evening and listed this house. So first day into business, got an offer accepted, house under contract. Second day into business, got a listing. Now this got the attention of my sales manager. Yeah. Yeah. And so what happened was he said, let's go for a ride. We're going to go here and look at some houses, and I'll talk to you about different subdivisions. He just wanted to get to know me a little better. And when we're out looking at these houses, we drove by one. There was these huge weeds out in front of it. Okay. And I said, my gosh, his name was Oli, by the way. He says, Oli, I can't believe it. When I first moved to this community about a month ago, I noticed that property was for sale. I was looking, or that property had the weeds in front of it, and there was no for sale sign or anything. I was looking for a place to rent, and it looks like it's still vacant. So he says, well, kid, I'll tell you what, either you follow up on it or I will. Which would you prefer? I said, well, I need to follow up on it, and so I did, so training really sucked back in the 70s, let me tell you. I mean, we really weren't told what to do very well. And so, heck, I didn't know what to do. And so I went to the county assessor's office, the county office is there, and went into one department and says, oh, that's not us, to find out who the owners are. That's the other department downstairs. So anyway, I found out who the owner was, and they had some pieces of paper there that were kind of like cardstock that they were just using for scratch paper. And it's like half of an 8.5 by 11. So I wrote the name of the seller or the owner of that property on that, and I went back to the office and looked him up in the phone book. We used to have phone books, Anyway, I looked him up and I wrote down his phone number and I started calling him. Now, he didn't answer the phone. So I tried again. I tried for the next couple of days. And every time I called, I'd write, the time and date I called, and no answer, no answer, no answer, no answer. I didn't know you shouldn't taint your leads like that because, it's really irrelevant. I'm going to keep calling till a guy answers the phone. So after a couple of days, I called one day and he did answer the phone. And I says, well, Mr. Dusbovic, his name was John Dusbovic. I said, I see you have that great duplex out there. I'd like you, I'm a real estate agent. I'd really like to help you do something with it. Find a tenant, put it on the market. He says, well, kid, I appreciate your call, but I'm not going to do anything with that right now. I'm just going to let it sit, And he said, but thanks for the call. And he dismissed himself. He got off the phone. Well, that didn't make sense to me. I was a young kid driving a Volkswagen Bug. Didn't own any real estate, and to have a great asset like that and not have it producing income or doing something with it didn't make sense to me. So I called him back. Now, not right then. It was like a day or so later. Because I knew he had a genuine need. Now, if they have a genuine need and you're calling to help them with that need, whether they want to recognize that need or not, they have a genuine need. Okay, so it's not like he didn't own anything, or it's not like he owned something and it was already rented out and whatnot. There was a problem, and I wanted to help him solve that problem. So I kept calling and calling, and I spoke to him about 2 times, but I'd made like 17 dial attempts or something like that. And so I looked at that paper, that cardstock, and I said, this guy's never going to do anything. I'm going to throw it away in that round thing that you put the garbage in right by my desk. And a little voice went off in my head and said, no, make one more call. Picked up the phone, called. John answered the phone. He recognized my voice. He says, you really want to do something with this, don't you? And I said, yeah, John, I do. All right, come on out and list it. So I said, oh, okay, you live at this address. I got the address from the county assessor's office. No, I don't live at that address anymore. I live at this address. So I went out to this house. He lived right across the street from the duplex. He'd bought 2 lots across the street, built a duplex, and built his own home on across, from each other. And every night when he's going to bed, his sweetheart would say, honey, we really need to do something with the duplex. And he says, yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, so when I just kept calling and not being obnoxious, just saying, John, didn't make sense to me. Wow, if I had a wonderful asset like that, he listed the property with me. Now, that was on a Wednesday, and back in the 70s, we did really exquisite marketing. I put a classified ad in the paper for the weekend. Okay. And we got a sign. I went out and put up a sign and whatnot. And so the paper came out on Friday, and Friday evening, I get a call. It was from a guy named Roger Malin. He said, I'd like to look at that property. It sounds real intriguing. It's a duplex, right? Yeah, it is. Okay. So, well, look, why don't you come to the office? I'll meet you Saturday morning at the office, and we'll talk for a bit, and then we'll go out and take a look at it. He says, yeah, that's great. I'll meet you at the office at 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and we'll do that. So 10 o'clock Saturday morning came along, and in walks Roger Malin. Now, Roger Malin was a high income earning federal employee, GS 16 or 15. Not married, didn't own any real estate, was paying a whole lot in taxes. And he wanted to get rid of that. In fact, that tax burden. In fact, he had read the most current Get Rich Quick book in real estate that was available at that time, which was, how I turned $1,000 into $1 million in my spare time in real estate. Okay. And he liked the property and wanted to make an offer, but he'd read that book. So I said, well, do you think the owner would carry back 10% or something? I said, yeah, let's write it up. Went back to the office, little round maple table, sat down, wrote the offer up. Called John. I was excited. It was Saturday afternoon. No answer. I tell you, that guy was never home. Okay. Later that day, I got a call from another broker. Hey, is this John Desbobic's property? Small town. Okay. I said, yeah, it is. He goes, oh, is it on a lockbox? Yeah, sure. Go ahead and show it. Yeah. So he did. Sunday, I'm calling. John's not answering the phone. And the other agent called and said, well, I have an offer on your property. And I said, oh, okay, I've written one too. How do I do this? Well, kid, here's how we do it. Take both offers to John at the same time, present them, and work up net sheets so he knows which one, how much he'll make on both of those. And let him choose which one he wants to take. Okay, yeah, I can do that. So he brought the offer over to me. Back in those days in real estate, we didn't have fax machines. We didn't have the internet. The agents actually got together and physically hand over the offers. Okay. So Monday morning, I'm calling, and John's home. Couldn't believe it. Monday morning. Now, I'd taken the listing on Wednesday, the week previous. And I called John. I says, John, I have 2 offers on your duplex. Oh, really? Wow. And at that point, John could start to feel this millstone that had been around his neck starting to lift. Yeah, come on out. Come right on out, Rick. I want to look at those right away. So I drove out there Monday morning, and I showed him the offers. I laid them down. I had net sheets for both of them. And the one from the other broker was $500 better than mine. And he says, I showed all that to John, and John says, well, yeah, these are intriguing. Wow, which one's best for you? I said, well, John, that doesn't make any difference. You should choose the one that's best for you. That'd be this other one, because you're going to make a little bit more money. He says, no, I want to choose the one that's best for you. Well, you only had to ask twice. That's this one, John, because I'm on both sides of the commission. I get the whole commission. So, oh yeah, sure. That's the one I want to sign. And he did. That other broker was never friends with me ever again, but whatever. I don't know. He thought I did something silly, which I hadn't. Okay. But sometimes when you do nice things for people, they want to do some nice things back. Now, John got elated that his property was finally going to get sold, and he wouldn't have to bother with it anymore. He was just real excited about it. Then he agreed to even carry back the 10% that Roger Malin talked about. So he grabbed my arm. He's a big guy. Kind of tucked it under his, pulled me out of his house, and we're going down the street, and I'm following him along. He's pulling me down the street. We go down 2 houses. He starts banging on the door, and the door is opened by Donnie Jaswinski. Now, John Desbobic and Donnie Jaswinski were good hunting and fishing buddies, and John was actually mentoring Donnie on how to be a builder. And he says, Donnie, this is Rick Roller, the greatest real estate agent ever to walk the face of the earth. There's some words to that effect, because I just solved his problem in his mind. He says, you need to list all your properties with Rick. And Donnie looks at me, looks at John, looks back at me and says, yeah, okay. Donnie had just fired his agent for lack of performance. And then the next day or two, he listed 5 or 6 houses with me. And over the next few months, more and more. And we became partners on properties. I mean, one day we're in the savings and loan president's office and everyone loved Donnie. And he said, you guys ought to keep some of these properties. Well, we'll just convert those construction loans over to permanent. So Donnie and I ended up owning 3 or 4 houses. Neither one of us put up any money. I mean, the construction loans covered all the cost and they just converted them over to permanents. And I handled the property management. That was cool. Went from the kid that didn't have anything to a kid that already started having things now. One day, Donnie came in the office and he had another builder in tow. I could tell because they both had like tape measures on their belt, And he says, this is my buddy. He builds too. Could you help him the way you're helping me? So now I had 2 builders. Then later I picked up a 3rd builder. Crazy. But remember the buyer, Roger Mayland? He bought the duplex. Hey, this was really cool. Do you have anything else? I says, well, there's a lot over here. Kind of shows some promise. Okay, I'll take that. Well, you're living in a rented apartment, Roger. You have a VA entitlement. Why don't we buy this 4-plex? Oh, yeah, that sounds great. He bought the 4-plex and several more over the next few years. Roger became my most loyal buyer. He would call me up and said, hey, I found another 4-plex around the corner from the other 3 you've sold me. Do you think you might have time to write it up for me? And I said, yeah, he actually became an investor in a little side hustle I put together. I put together an alternative long distance telephone company in Western Colorado. He was an investor in that. Now, all of that made me Rookie of the Year. And all of that also made, that's how I sold almost 100 homes my 2nd year in the business. But I want you to think about there. I told you there's nothing special about me. Where did all that come from? It came from one more call. Remember, I almost threw that away. And I thought, no, I'll make one more call. It's going to be tough out there. It's not going to be just a lay down shoe. It's going to be a tough deal. You're going to have to climb the hill. But you know what? If you climb the hill, you usually end up on top. Okay, so you got to climb the hill. And sometimes it's going to take you making one more call, one more push to get that listing, one more push to get that offer signed. Okay. So when you get to that point and you don't think it's going to work, remember the story, because my story will become your story, and make that one more call. Thanks for being with us tonight. Dan and I want you to know that we are behind you 110%. We give you our numbers. We tell you to call. And some of you don't call. Heck, if you're confused on something, please call. Well, I didn't want to bother you, Rick, so I thought maybe I can get through, all these practice tests on my own. You're not bothering me. If you're bothering me, I won't answer the phone. Okay. Don't text, call. And we'll spend a quality 3.5, 4 minutes together on the phone, and you'll understand the concept. So good night, everyone. I appreciate you being here. It's been fun for me, and it's going to be fun for you. We're entering into a really exciting time in the market. But remember, when it gets tough out there, make one more call. Thank you, and thank you, Dan. And we'll see you guys out there.